Hey guys, Paul McClain here, and welcome to the Monday Morning Wake Up Podcast. And excited to have you on. Excited that you're joining this morning. I don't know where you're at. If you're driving in your car, just getting out of bed, hopefully not just getting out of bed, but attacking the phones is what we need to be doing on a Monday morning. But I just hope this serves you well. I know it does me. Every single week I leave this podcast and I learn so much from the people that we have on. And every week I sit back and I say, who can we have on that could bring as much value to you guys as possible? That when you leave, you could go out and make this day better than yesterday because of what you experienced on this podcast. And so glad to have you on. And I want to introduce my guest that we have on today, a good friend of mine, someone that's blowing up their business, Eric Schmidt. Eric, thanks for joining, brother.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Honored to be here.
I'm excited to have you on, bro. And your business has really taken off in the last 12 months. In fact, Eric, what were you guys doing a year ago? And then what are you doing now?
We'll probably get real close to 1.5 million in September, if not eclipse that. So maybe a third of that, Paul.
Okay. So maybe 500 grand to 1.5 million in 12 months. And then I think if we go, let's see, if we go back 12 months before that 500 grand, what were you guys doing 24 months ago?
Ooh, so September of 2019, I was in the business for I was full-time 5 months. So, 150 grand, maybe 100 grand, maybe senior sales manager, VP.
And the crazy thing is, we say 100 grand. I know probably 90% of that was your volume, because you've also absolutely crushed it with personal production. You've been a Hall of Fame producer now for both years.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, man. So if anybody's just joining and saying, hey, can I scale this fast? It's always funny, Eric. I talked to this agent today. He was 25. I said, the funny thing is, how many people I talk to that are like 60 and they say, man, if I would have been 20 and found this. And it's like, no, dude, in 24 months, you can crush this. So if you're 70, at 72, you can retire. It doesn't matter what it is, because you can scale it so fast. And I love the fact that you validate that point, that anybody that's stepping into this business and they say, man, I want a real shot of success for my family. I want to have more money, more time, more freedom to be able to do more for my family, do what I want to do, give what I want to give. They can do it in a short period of time. And you validate that, man. And I'm excited to kind of dive into some of these things that I believe make a massive difference when people get started. And what we're going to talk about today, guys, is expectation. And expectation is massive. Expectation is kind of a strong belief that you have in something or something that's going to happen. That's expectation. And Eric, I know for myself, and I know for yourself included, we both came into this business as producers initially wanting to build a business. But the first sale we made, we really didn't have a team. And then we started building it. So we had our own expectations as a producer, and we knew what that was. And then we also have seen a lot of different agents join the team with different expectations and kind of the results that have come from that, and the impact that an expectation can have with somebody joining this business. And so as we kind of start off, man, I'd love to have you kind of talk about, you came from a different industry, you found Family First Life. What was your expectation originally, Eric, when you stepped into Family First Life?
Yeah, and just to touch on what you said earlier, Paul, I think everyone finds Family First Life when it's the exact right time for them. Because when I was 20 years old, I don't know if I could have done this. Yeah, my 20 years old. So I think everyone finds this at the right time for them, right? So with that, my expectations coming into this was at the bottom line. I had to replace what my W-2 take home was when I was in the automotive industry. So I put my back against the wall, Paul, to make sure that, that I could, provide for Carrie and my 3 children, and that we because we were not in a position where we could go backwards. We came into this thing with no safety net, and very, no knowledge, no deep knowledge of insurance. I was a car guy for 2.5 decades, so my expectation was I need to put everything I can into this so we never go backwards and we can go forwards financially in our family.
So for you, what was kind of like your initial belief? Did you believe that there was going to be a lot of hard work to kind of recreate yourself in this business, so to speak, to create new habits and disciplines related to what would lead you to success here? Did you kind of have an expectation that it would be difficult, but you really can't fail because if you just made X amount of sales, that would cover the nut that you had? as far as a budget? Like, how did you kind of give yourself some confidence when it came to stepping into something new and moving forward?
Yeah. And in today's family first life world, there's so many examples of, people, gender, age, ethnicity, location in the country, I didn't have those. I mean, I had some, right? I had you, I had Andrew, Grady, Dominique, a few others, obviously Nick and Eric, but I didn't have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in all these different places. Like, she's doing it, he's doing it. But what when I went, I was doing this, I was full-time at the dealership, and then I decided to do this full-time as well. And I never did part-time, full-time. It was always full-time, full-time. So, I slept my 30, 40 hours a week. I was at the dealership 60 hours a week, and whatever was left, was this. And it was usually anywhere between 50 and 70 hours a week that I was committed to this. Now, during money-making time, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., obviously, I was doing any money-making activities that I could to produce income, from the leads that I acquired. And then a non-money making time, 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., it was watching podcasts, doing trainings, figuring out, the grids and the spreadsheets, and try to be really efficient. Because I didn't have a lot of time, Paul. I couldn't spend an hour in each house because I needed to really compress time. And I learned a lot of that, from the people like you that, allowed me to get through those many houses as I could.
Do you think that having a schedule that was really that jam-packed, I mean, it sounds like you didn't have any kind of white space. So when you stepped in and you're working with insurance and family first life, you didn't have a ton of time just to sit there and stare. You didn't have a ton of time to procrastinate. You didn't have a ton of time to sit back and dwell on these thoughts of well, maybe I should know this first, or maybe I should do this first. You just had to run. Do you think having less white space kind of kept you in a position where your expectation didn't get muddled down with doubt and discouragement? Did that play a part, and why do you think it did, if it did?
I think 100%, my days, my white space stopped at like around 4:30 a.m. because I didn't know what time the leads got put into the CRM, those 1 month old final expense, and those 1 month old mortgage protection. Because that's really, there wasn't instant internet leads. There wasn't internet life leads. There wasn't a lot of these leads that we have available. There wasn't as many Facebook vendors and all these other vendors. So that's where my white space ended. And then I had to leave the house here by 7 a.m. to get to the dealership by 8 a.m. so I could dial for 1 hour before my shift started at the dealership. And then, also, dropping kids off at school and all the other stuff like that. But it left me no room to, to do other things, whatever it was. So yeah, I mean, without having, no white space on the calendar, it was boom, 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 boom. It was really regimented.
I love that, man. And I think that you hit something very, very big for everybody. I mean, I really believe that the biggest reason why people fail in the insurance business or with family first life, or just in being self-employed in general, it's a lack of structure. And if you have so much space that's not accounted for, and that can be anything, like I have my calendar planned out for when I'm going to spend time with my kids and what I'm going to do specifically, because I want it to be intentional. Because if it's not, dude, I'm a disaster. The Bible talks about the kids obeying their parents, but right behind that, it talks about the parents not like harassing the kids and like irritating and annoying them. Well, dude, if I don't have intentionality behind what I'm doing with my kids, dude, I start messing with them, harassing, and before we know it, dude, like I'm creating a great sin because it's not intentional. So, but what I know to be true is if everything's planned out, I don't wander so much. And if it's not planned out, I just leave myself open to wandering. And typically that gives me these thoughts of why it won't, or maybe it can't, or a different interpretation of clients, different interpretation of leads, different interpretation of the business. And that new interpretation while I'm wandering is typically leaving me in a space where doubt, discouragement is bred, and I'm walking down now a path that's going to lead to failure and behaviors that don't lead me to success. But when white space is just eliminated and structures in place, I'm typically more inclined to do the activities and not wander and continue to press forward without diminishing my expectation. And I think that's such a big deal. So what you just spoke about, Eric, I think that if more people could sit back and say, how can I fill in my white space, I believe your expectation is not going to get destroyed. And for me, and this happens at every level, like when I started to just build, meaning that Schmidt, I started to step out of producing because, we were doing millions a month and my phone would blow up. And I realized that, it's almost hurting the team now if I'm in the field because I have so much going on, people asking questions, managers growing, new staff, things like that. But when I did that, it was difficult for me to fill in that block of white space that was now there because production was starting to leave it. And I struggled and I started to have doubt and discouragement and my expectation on how fast we could grow and everything. I started to feel differently. And I realized it's because I didn't replace that space with structured activities that would help me out. And that was a big lesson that I learned as I transitioned into just slowly fixing my focus on building a business and helping out agencies and things like that. And so I think it's a massive deal. Schmidt, when you look at some of the agents that you've hired, because you've hired some, you got a lot of VPs, managers, you've developed a lot of leaders. You're a leader of leaders. When people come on board, the producers that do well, what's an expectation that you think is necessary for them to have as they get started? And what's an expectation that you've seen different people have that really leads them to struggling or really kind of being so discouraged they leave the business? What two different expectations do you see an agent typically has that leads them down those two different paths?
So I think the expectation, no matter where an agent, that decides to join Family First Life is located, is, hopefully they're within 2-3 hours of an office, and get them to an office. Part of our onboarding process is to have them join WorkSpots, Paul, and, find that local office, or at least find that local online community of like-minded people that are also already in WorkSpots. And so from when they've passed their exam, whatever their schedule allows, depending on if they're currently in a W-2 or a 1099 situation, is get them to the office either early in the morning, late at night. We're there all day. I apologize about that.
No, you're good.
Okay.
That's some money making phone right there, dude. That thing is ringing. Things are taking place. I like it.
So I think it's important for them to get to an office, Paul. I think that's important for them to pick up the phone and start dialing right away. Even if it's not for them, because there's a learning curve and there's a wall for them to break through, for them getting hung up on not answer, no one answering. People say they already got it, they're all set, they've already taken care of it. Can you call me later? And all those trainings. And when you and I think it was you and Andrew did a back and forth, a few months ago on a podcast. That was great. You guys were just kind of going back and forth and going over objections and stuff. But I think getting people on the phone right away, it's kind of like, when horses are born, they're born walking right away. I mean, they got to get walking right away. So I think as soon as someone passes that exam, the quicker they can get on the phone and not, and have that mindset and that expectations. Hey, you're going to pass your exam, and then, within the next 48 hours, you're going to be on the phone. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? It'll all make sense when you get to the office. So we get them to an office if they're in a position, if they're in North Dakota or, somewhere in the middle of New Mexico, and we can't get them to an office, and we'll do a Zoom with them. But I think that's the biggest expectation, because that's going to be their biggest struggle on why they can't do this or why they think they can't do it. And it might put them on a different path to exit the business, sooner than they should be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it goes right back to that structure. If they can be plugged in to a place that it's easier to say yes to the things they should say yes to, and easier to say no to the distractions and things that will take them away, it's going to put them in a better spot. So I 100% agree. Now, I do know at a lot of these offices that we go to, and I see agents come in here, that expectations when it comes to working leads is a big deal as well. Meaning I can have an agent that works, a batch of 100 leads, and they're like, man, these are the best leads ever. They're fired up. Their result has exceeded the expectation they had. And then there's some agents that they're like, man, these ain't any good. These are crap. What I realize is their response or perspective has everything to do with their expectation. And some of the agents, they don't know what to expect when they're calling different lead types. Like for me, when I got started, Eric, I was working leads that were 5 years old. And I knew if I got 100 leads, I'd book 10 appointments. So I had to get 200 leads a week to get 20 appointments. So when I had 9 no hangups and 7 people said that that they don't like me and, that I'm ugly. I'm like, you can't even see me. This ain't a Zoom call. What do you mean? They were talking crap, and all that stuff took place. I didn't really care. It didn't change my expectation on the lead because I knew that numbers are numbers and this was my expectation. I guess it's no different than going to a restaurant. If you expect to only get a salad and they bring out all these different entrees and a dessert, man, you're like, man, this is the best place ever. But if you expect all that and all they bring out is a salad and a main entree, not a dessert, well, then your expectation. So what are the expectations? Let's just center in on instant internet life leads, because we have a lot of producers that are absolutely crushing it right now on those lead types as they get started. But I do believe expectation is going to change their behavior. Their behavior will change if the expectation is not right, meaning that if they don't know what they should expect, then when they get a result and experience something completely different than expectation, what'll take place is discouragement, frustration is bred, and then they almost mess up the ones they should book because they've now come to a new narrative that these are this way. They make a long-term projection based off of an outcome that just really had the wrong expectation. So just talk about that, maybe what the expectation, how do you set up expectation when it comes to instant internet life leads when you're working with these new agents getting started?
So I think the first thing they need to not expect, but the thing they need to do is not just print the leads out. Now whether if you're a paper person or an electronic person, it's one thing or the other, but you have to export those leads to a spreadsheet, and you can do that right through the CRM, because that's going to give you some very great non-public information that I always use in a call. A lot of times this stuff is pre-populated from social media, so it might not be a current address or a current this or a current that. Maybe someone put in a fake birthday. But when you see specific height and weight, Paul, I always use that in my phone call. So when I say, hey, Paul, this is Eric, I'm just getting back to you. Looks like you filled out something online. It says here you're 5'8", 190. Does that sound like you? Yeah, it does. Perfect. Again, my name is, and then it takes all the other stuff out of the way, So I think that's important. It's not really an expectation, but I think I expect them to, know to go to the spreadsheet, right, to get that non-public information. But as far as what to do, if they're using phone burner or if they're not using phone burner, there's kind of two different methodologies there. But if someone's not using phone burner and they're hard dialing the phone, I would expect half of those people to pick up the phone and answer. Okay, I would expect to have a conversation with half of those people. I would expect to book appointments with the second half, with that third half, I guess. So those would be my expectations moving into it, and then obviously those will the last number will continue to increase. With the momentum of getting better.
So if you have 100 leads, half of those you expect to pick up.
Yeah.
Of those half of those, so 25, you expect to have a conversation with, like meaning that you engage in the script. They don't just hang up or something like
Correct.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And of those 25, you expect to book
12, 13.
12, 13. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So think about
out of those 12 or 13, we can continue the expectations when we get out on the road. And then, so we can talk about that in a minute. I don't want to jump ahead.
No, you're good. So, I mean, if you have 100 leads, 13 should be booked. And so for me, it was just it was just running through the numbers as fast as possible so I can get to those 13. But I can't, I guess, emphasize the importance of knowing that your response to the other 25 or 50 that don't pick up and the half that you don't make it through the conversation, like don't let that mess up the 13. And the one thing I'll point out to Eric, I think is very important when it comes to the psychology of booking appointments. My expectation is that I should book everybody I speak to because everybody needs life insurance. And like my belief is so strong in that if they have life insurance, we have so many options and carriers that I can give them a better plan and improve the situation. If they don't have life insurance, they need it because it's hands down the most important thing that anybody could ever have in place for their family. Like I'm convicted in that. So I think there's two expectations. My expectation is that everybody's going to want to book an appointment, but I also have an expectation that 13 out of 100 will, meaning that when they don't book an appointment or they don't pick up, I don't change the narrative or the belief that everybody should book an appointment because it's that important. And I think where agents mess up is realizing that there's two expectations. One is that everybody should book it because it's the most important thing out there. That's my expectation. Everybody should because it's so important. But the other expectation is that these are the numbers, right? The possibility is everybody should because it's that important. The reality is this is what the numbers are. This is what the ratio is. But I think that the danger takes place when somebody looks at the numbers in an incorrect expectation, or they get some hangups or whatever, and they start to change the narrative on the fact that it's not the most important thing for everybody. And then they pick up these other things like, well, maybe it's not that good. Maybe the lead's not that good. No, for me, everybody needs it. And if they have it, I can help them in a better spot. So I think that's a very vital point to move into, is not to change the narrative of one expectation based off what you're seeing as far as the other expectation or what you're really currently getting. So anyways, I'll pass it back to you. I know you wanted to kind of dive into more of those numbers and what it looks like getting into the house and what have you.
Yeah. So not really in home, Paul, but keep building on the expectations, right? 50, 50, 50%. Now you got 12 or 13. Obviously that's enough for like a day and a third of running, right? You should not, if you're dialing today on Monday, you should have 20 appointments booked for Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay. But your expectations also should be, obviously you expect everyone to be there because you tied it down, you checked the gate code, you confirmed if they had dogs, if the significant other was going to be there. I mean, you really did a kick butt job of tying it down, but sometimes things happen, right? Family emergencies, forgot to tell the spouse, got called into work, whatever the situation is. So how do you help your head with expectations? Hey, not all 12 people are going to be there, but I do expect one of them probably not to be there. And I already have 5 door knocks plugged into my Road Warrior app that I'm going to go hit because those people didn't answer the phone. So when I go to 123 Main Street to meet with Bob and Tina and they're not there, I'm like, okay, great. I already have a plan for that. And I have the closest 5 door knocks to that appointment. And I've already pre-programmed that into Road Warrior. And I did that during non-money making time at night, instead of watching this or scrolling through that. I've already set those expectations up so I can keep my activity super high and my attitude right in line with where it needs to be, not too high, not too low, because I'm like, oh, Bob and Betty are not both there. Boom, Road Warrior, next 5, bing, bing, bing. Then my next appointment's then. So that's the part I wanted to touch on, Paul.
That's great, dude. I love that. And it's like the other way, if you don't have that backup plan, which that's such a big part, like planning out, if this doesn't happen, what do you do then? And almost kind of having forethought into that. So then you don't change your attitude. But if you don't have forethought, then you can start saying, wow, why wasn't Betty there? Betty wasn't there. Was it the lead? Maybe it was a vendor. Was it the vendor? I got it. And all these different things, you go down this path that has no accountability, nothing you can control. And it starts to change the expectation narrative, opposed to maybe he was just tied up at work, or maybe I didn't do a good enough job at, articulating the value. Obviously it's vitally important to him, but maybe there was a lack of value or urgency there, and having that be the interpretation. It's no different than, Eric, I remember making my first round of dials, and I'm dialing, and this is 14 years ago. And dude, this guy goes off. It's like my third person picks up. He's like, why are you calling me? And he's just going cussing at me, man. I mean, I hung up the phone and I was like, dude, I didn't know that this job entailed like verbal abuse. Like, I'm going to have to go check my mom worked at the domestic violence shelter at the time. I was like, I'm going to go check myself in and see if they'll take a man. Cause I felt like I was abused. Like, what the heck? So I put down on the top lead, I put, don't call him back. He's a jackass, that's just to be very transparent with you guys. Yeah. And I circled it because the person hired me said, don't ever throw a lead away. Well, the next day I call and I'm not paying attention. I'm just calling, And I get this guy on the phone, Ken. I booked the appointment, and I look and it says, don't give him a call back. And it was what the note I put down. And I thought, like, what the heck? How is that possible? And what I realized was, dude, who knows? He could have walked in the door, right? His daughter could have got suspended from school for something. His wife could have been like, really? You didn't bring the trash in? The trash is all over the street, right? His boss could have yelled at him for something else going out there. Who knows? And then I call, hey, Ken, this is Paul with the mortgage. And he's like, bah, he takes it out on me. But what I realized is that, dude, if I always believe and expect that this is the most important thing ever, then my narrative is maybe he had a bad day, maybe he just slipped his mind, maybe things took place, but it never lowered my conviction in that how important this was. And I think that was such an important thing that allowed me to kind of go out there and have the right belief in this business and how important it was to make me effective and intentional and passionate about this business and about these clients I was serving. And so I think that was such a big deal. Anything else when it comes to like instant internet life leads, as far as what the expectation you set, or maybe the forecast that you give an agent? So when things take place, it's not like something that they didn't expect. They just understand like this is the way it's going to be, whether that's objections, what they get, what they hear, what, how many leads are going to have LeBron James on, and it's not LeBron. Like, what do you go through with him so they kind of know like, hey, this is what it should be?
And just to touch on that thought that I had just a moment ago, we talked about white space earlier, and sometimes all of a sudden white space creeps back up. It's like the blob. It's like, oh, where'd that white space come from? Well, if you're working to eradicate that white space and be proactive about it by having that road warrior schedule already planned out for your appointments the following day, when that white space starts to crawl back in, you can just wipe it out real fast. Like, oh, no problem. We'll take care of that real quick. So I just wanted to mention that. So really important. I think, when, and I learned this from Grady, you start with a wide funnel and you bring it down, right? So I do that, talking about when you're on the call with these instant internet leads. Are you still in, I'm out in Connecticut. Are you still in Hartford, Connecticut? Yes. Are you still in Tolland? Yes. Are you still in, do you still live on Main Street, or is that not updated? So like if you're using those types of word tracks and starting wide with where they live and narrowing it down, you can be proactive and be ready for them to say, I don't live there anymore. This must be a scam. And then they hang up on you. So I always, kind of use that method. County, town, street. Is that updated yet? Or do I not have the updated one? Okay, what is that updated address? So I do use that, Paul. I always have fastpeoplesearch.com pulled up on another screen or on my phone. So if I get, a number that doesn't look right, or I need more information, I can just type that in and get some free information that's on the web. Those are some expectations. Using a dial tracker, right? Sometimes, if it's your first day dialing, it's not important how many, how many you dial, but, how many are you dialing? How long did it take you to get 10 dials? How long did it take you to get the next 10 dials? Okay, why did it take you 5 minutes to do the first one and 20 minutes to do the second one? And then we can kind of, like you say, unpack those type of situations and look at those numbers and say, let's dive a little bit deeper. What are your expectations over the next 50 minutes, and how many dials you're going to get in? And then what's even nicer, talking about expectations, so today everyone's going to go out and do their dialing. Now, when they buy more leads on Wednesday, which is another expectation, hey, we're going to get another batch of these, on Wednesday night, so we can dial a new batch on Wednesday. The expectation of what's that continue to look like? Why do we buy more? If we haven't already resolved these, what that looks like. So getting through that dial tracker, I remember Andrew said it a long, long time ago, and the numbers may have, changed a little bit, but dial sessions are 250 dials and 20 appointments. It's not an I did my 250, I'm going to go home, or I hit 125, I'm going to do the rest from my house. If your expectations might not be in the line if you think you're going to get the same results calling from, the house or something like that. So those are a couple expectations.
I love that, man. I mean, it's almost like the difference between the athlete that says, I'm going to take 100 shots. And then the other person just says, I'm not going to stop until I make 100 shots. And that slight difference makes such a massive difference over a long period of time, where it's like initially after a week or two, you can't see the fruits of that small, subtle decision and choice. But after a year, you're like, oh my God, that person's so much substantially better. And it was just this one thing. I'm going to make 250 dials and 20 appointments, opposed to I'm just going to, book my 20 appointments. Because what that leads you to do is when you've got 250 phone calls, but you don't have, you have 17 appointments, you push a little more. And maybe that day you make 330, or if you've got 18 appointments, you made 250, you go out there and make 300. What that does is just builds more skill. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that I think is a healthy expectation, is to know that even sometimes the worst case scenario, what we don't want is better than the best case scenario if we don't do something. And what I give you an example is I thought about like driving to my last appointment at say 9 o'clock at night. Eric, like, have you ever had, maybe it's a phenomenal day. It's a Wednesday. You're killing it. You're like, all I need to write is 5,000 today. And that's what I expect is 5,000. Well, dude, it's like 7 p.m. and you're at 12,000 and you're running late to your 8 o'clock appointment. You're going to get there at 9:30. It's an hour drive. And you're like, dude, I mean, I'm a beast, dude. Like I wrote 10,000. Like they don't know about me. I'm going to reschedule that for another day because I don't need that appointment. And you have that temptation to go back, or you get smoked, right? You got zero. You had 7 no-shows and 3 no-sales, and you're running late to your last appointment. And what I realized is that when you step back and you think like, even if they don't show up, like that's the worst case. I drive all the way out there and they're not there. What I gained was this reputation with myself that says I'm an and then some kind of person. I go the extra mile. And then you're left going into the next day with a deserve more factor. Like I deserve more. So now your expectation rises on what you can get moving forward because of what you're currently doing. But if you go out and they are there and you make the sale, that's great. What I'm saying is, even if you wasted that hour in your mind, what you gain, because you think, well, that's a loss. What if I drive out there, they're not there? That's the loss. Well, what you gain is so much greater than what you lost because your character's developed and your expectation is now likely to rise moving forward. So Eric, when you look at, I guess time and periods in the business where you're just getting beat up, maybe, you had a streak, like I had weeks where I had like 9 no-shows in a row and chargebacks happen, things like that, like almost the things that are, they're going to happen, right? It is what it is. How did you keep your expectation right and respond to it and keep moving forward when you had struggles, adversity, setbacks, where you didn't start thinking that maybe this just isn't going to work and hang it up, but you used it as fuel to move forward? How did you do that?
So I've always been super competitive, Paul, since I've been a little guy, and which I was never been little, but when I was littler. And, one thing that I want to mention is Labor Day 2019, the Friday before, I had an appointment booked, like you were explaining, had a really good day going. Carrie and I were scheduled to go to a wedding, and I had someone that booked an appointment through my Calendly link. I had it all messed up. She booked it 2 weeks in advance, and it was on my calendar. I saw it blinking at me on my Google Calendar, and I said, "All right, I'm late to get home to go to this wedding, but I have this appointment on the books." I went and sat with her. She let me in. She's like, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Had totally forgotten that she had booked the appointment herself. Very small death benefit, very small premium, very tight budget. The Tuesday after Labor Day, I get a call from the funeral home in her hometown, and she had passed away that weekend. And her son, she was divorced. Her son would have never been able to handle that financial burden. And again, I think it was like a $5,000, $7,000 death benefit, Paul. But literally, and I'm brand new in the business, my heart like totally sunk. And I'm like, it would have been so selfish of me to have gone home to get to this wedding that I really didn't want to go to anyway. And not, and I always say the insurance gods are always watching, so they know when you're going to the appointment, they know when you're doing your 250 and your 20. They know when you're buying leads, when you're kind of rehashing old lead, they're always watching. So that discipline of always knowing that the insurance gods are always watching. But with the, with what you were saying, as far as, when you're like kind of on the brink or on the borderline, then, why did you originally get into this? And why I got into this was to, be able to spend more quality time with my 3 children before they get old. Carrie and I just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary the other day, and, making it through 2.5 decades in the car business, I said, "Oh, I'm not going to screw this up now." So those, I always go back to my why, and, kind of like we do some training with our clients and our agents, to write down 2-3 things, before they leave. Why was this important to you? Why did we put insurance in place today? So if they ever do call back and say, "Hey, you know what? I think I need to cancel this," we can pull out that lead sheet and flip to the back of it and say, hey, remember you said that you wanted to do this because you didn't want to leave this financial burden to your sister. What's changed? Well, nothing. So sometimes you have to kind of go back to the whys, not only with yourself personally, but obviously with your clients in that example, to see what's going on. But I told myself I was never going to go back to the car business, and I always could. That's one thing Matt Smith and Sean Ruggiero said to me at the convention in February of 19. They're like, dude, what's the worst case scenario? You just go back and start selling cars again. I'm like, I guess you're right, but I knew I never wanted to go back and do that, Paul. So I think I always kind of keep pushing that in. I think social media and the Slack groups and all those groups actually help too, because I remember when I was driving home one day and I saw Matt Walker posted a sale. I'm like, and I was going home, and it was like 7 o'clock. It was early. I'm like, well, I'm not going home. I'm going to go find someone else to help. And so you get pushed by those types of situations as well.
I love that, man. So really kind of putting yourself in a position where what you see and what you hear kind of empowers you and brings out the best in you, allows you to really make the choices that are going to lead to success. And I think that's so essential to kind of go out there and still always perform at your peak performance level, because it's easy, man, to be swayed by emotions. They're so fleeting. And being self-employed, we're able to be moved by those at a higher level. We can say, you know what, I'm not going to wake up at that time I wanted to wake up. I'm not going to start dialing when I wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and convince myself that I can get less leads because I got more to still call that didn't pick up. You can start to do that stuff opposed to just working a job. It's non-negotiable. It's what I have to do. And I think when you're in the right environment, it helps keep your feet on the right path. And I do believe, Eric, like what you sow is what you're going to reap. And a lot of times that seed you're sowing, even if nothing came from it as far as that given moment, what is birthed is a higher level of confidence, a higher level of deserve more. And you knew that you made a difference for that family. And that now when you step in with other families, dude, nobody can take away that confidence that, man, I stand up for my clients. I care about my families. I do what I need to do. I don't get swayed by my emotions, what I feel like doing. I do what's essential and necessary to serve people. And now when you're sitting there and the client says, I want to think about it. I want to shop around. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like, dude, you stand up for that person and you help more people because of it. And it's one of those little things that might be not as seen, right? That doesn't seem as valuable, but it brings so much more value. Just like our bodies, man, like you can see your face and that's great. But the things that are unseen, your liver, all those kind of things, man, you lose one of those, you thought your arm was important. You ain't waking up. And that's just how it is a lot of times, what we do and how we do it and when we do it. And so, Eric, what I want to do real quick is kind of talk about some rapid fire things that would mess up the right expectations. So what are some like red flags, like be aware, be on guard, alert, things that can mess up people's expectation as they move forward towards success with Family First Life?
If depending on what your budget is for leads, right? Only buying 30 instant internet leads. Okay. I'm going to buy 30 because that's what I can afford. Or even better, Paul, I'll say, hey, Paul, what's your lead budget? $400. Okay. $400 for the month. They'll say, okay, so you have, $1,200 or whatever the math is. You have $1,600 right now, and you're going to spread it out $400 a week. Yeah, that was my plan. Perfect. So that's in my opinion, that's broken. So we're going to fix that. We're going to move that $400. We're going to make that $1,600. I'm going to cap it off myself to $2,000. And if there's a work spots, we're still going to spend the same $2,000. And we're going to get so many pitches, so many swings at the bat that we're going to be in a position where we cannot fail. So I think that's a big thing. I hear that a lot. What's your lead budget? $400 a week for the month. Okay, so there's 4 weeks in a month. We're going to move that 1,600 to right now, and we're going to put you in a position where you can't lose. So because people, when they want to dip their toe in the water, or they just kind of want to figure this thing out, hey, we're going all in. Okay, we're going to pull that 1,600 forward, and we're going to go. We're going to pull all those weeks together and put them in this thing. So I think that's one thing. Not going into the opportunity with enough opportunities. So that's one of them, Paul. Thinking that the phones are going to be easy, that they don't have to. A lot of people say, I've been watching a lot of videos, on phones. I'm like, okay, but are the words coming out of your mouth? Are you talking to your spouse, your parents? Are you recording it? Are you talking to your dog about it? How are you getting the words out of your mouth? Because as soon as you go live, you're like, oh, but no, I messed up, and then it's over.
Yep.
So I think, again, I mean, I've been hearing about it since, November of 2018, when I first started, following Family First Life, that phones are everything. Okay. And when people, discount that, okay, and they're like, and I discounted it more than anybody, because I mean, I've made tens and hundreds of thousands of dials over my years in the automotive business. I thought that was going to be the least of my concerns, and it was my biggest challenge by far. In second place, it was, doing things too transactional in the home, but the phones by far. I think, not, what do you want, what do you need, and what are you willing to give up to get it? Sean Mike said that to me the first time I sat down with him in regards to this business. Okay. And that, before Thanksgiving in 18, what do you want, what do you need, and what are you willing to give up to get it? And if you're not willing to give up anything, you're not willing to give up social media, you're not willing to give up the gym, you're not willing to give up sleep, you're not willing to give up driving, traveling, being away from your kids or your spouse or your parents for longer than you typically have been, you're going to be in a challenge situation. So not knowing that there's going to be an investment that you have to make, but it's not going to be forever, right? Depending on what you want to get out of this thing. So I can probably, go further, Paul, but I know we're on the clock here.
Dude, that was phenomenal stuff. I asked the last question, and in the last question, your answer was like worth another 2 hours of unpacking, man. That was so good. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing these insights, because I don't think you can ever have the expectation that's going to take you to the next level unless you hear it from somebody that's got a thought process, that understands what it looks like to get there, and that can share it with you. Because all of a sudden we start to develop these new narratives and things based off what our past is, what we've experienced, what we've heard around. And that's why it's so important to stay plugged in, because today, Eric, what I heard from you kind of renews my mind with the right expectations to move forward in different facets. And I believe it did the same thing for the audience that's plugged into this Monday Morning Wake Up podcast as well. It renews your mind, and it kind of reclarifies and rejuvenates the expectation that's necessary to go out there and see success. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to hear these things, because if not, you can start buying into different things. It's kind of like, is this thing difficult? Yes. And it should be, but it's so easy to think that maybe the difficulty is a sign or something to change the story we should have and the expectation within it. No, it's supposed to suck. And I remember that was one of my best, things I would go back to, is when it was really painful, I would say good, because if it wasn't, then why would I expect to have a lifestyle that nobody else would ever really kind of experience? It should be like that. And I think in today's culture, it's so easy to be sucked into this entitlement thought process or instant gratification. And when things get tough, we start running. No, when things get tough, praise God that you're learning, developing, and getting better, but don't lose expectation. It's supposed to be like that. LeBron James has 3 people guarding him, not because he sucks, but because he's better. There's a bigger outcome. He's got a bigger impact on the game's results. Therefore, resistance is elevated. So if today you're experiencing more resistance, maybe check the expectation on what it should be to get there. Maybe the expectation on how the process you got to go through, the path you got to cross. Maybe you got the wrong expectation. Maybe you thought you'd hop on and book 12 appointments when you called 12 leads. Maybe you got to change the expectation. Frustration will diminish. But don't lose the expectation that if you continue in the process, it's inevitable that you will see success. Just don't quit. Just keep moving. Everybody's got stories and situations that they could say, man, I had this happen. I had these chargebacks, and I took a couple of days off, and I didn't realize I went back to work and there was 4 charge. That's supposed to be there, right? Frustration unmasks what needs to be tweaked and adjust in a rejuvenation of the right expectation. And so, Eric, dude, thank you so much for joining today, man. Phenomenal podcast. I appreciate you as always, bro. And I was laughing when you talked about how big you were. They can't tell on this podcast, but you're a big dude, man. In fact, I told him on the beginning of this, before we started, I said, if I shaved my head and shaved my face and I walked next to Eric with the same outfit, I would be like the mini me version of him, just 3 foot shorter. So thank you for joining, man. I appreciate you, bro. Guys, make sure to comment. We do a drawing right after this with whoever's commented, and they win lead money. Also, like, subscribe, share this as well. There's somebody that right now, if they heard this, it would give them the right expectation. And with the right expectation, they would move in the right direction. And in that, they would see the right results that they're looking for. And so do a quick share. Guys, make it a massive week. Eric, thank you again for joining. Be strong, stay steadfast, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
What is going on, guys? It is time once again to give away $250 in lead credit. If you commented on last week's video, which is playing right here, featuring Nina, you are automatically entered to win $250 in leads. You can still do that with this video. Just comment down below. Tell us what you got out of it. Tell us what you want to see out of it. Tell us anything. Just leave a comment, and each comment automatically enters you to win $250 worth of leads. Let's get to it. See who won this week. Boom. Braulio Melendez. Nina is the epitome of an FFL agent running business and growing their business. Would love to hear her train on the details of how she's using social media. Her work ethic inspires. She is so focused and maintains a tremendous attitude. Nina is so disciplined when it comes to who she spends her time with. Are they benefiting her? If not, she stays away. Just spends her time with folks that move her forward. That's awesome. She surrounds herself with good people, and that's what we need to do to expand our business. Again, Braulio, leave a comment or get in touch with Victoria. That was my bad. Get in touch with Victoria, get those $250 worth of leads, and for the rest of you, it's that easy. Just leave a comment. It doesn't even have to be a whole lot, but if you leave a comment like that that's full of insight and reflection, that's awesome. But leave a comment anyway. We'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.